What's going on YouTube? It's Teach back again with another video, and today we're talking about each and every offense across the NFL, and hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you do, be sure to hit that like button. It really would help me out a ton. If you're new right here and want to see more football content, just hit that big red subscribe button and let me hear your thoughts. You know, we're going to tier rank and then we'll go back through at the very end and go 1 through 32 as best I can. I'd love to see your rankings. What do you think the top 5 offenses in the league are? Maybe who's the difference between elite and solid? Where do you draw that line? And, you know, what potential breakouts maybe change where each and every offense stands. I'd love to have your thoughts, anything you have to share. I'd love to hear it, and I respond to just about every comment. So let's talk about each and every offense across the NFL down below. Very simple. Like I said at the very end, we'll go back through and rank it as best I can. Try to give you a 1 through 32 where I stand on each and every team. We start with the Arizona Cardinals, and we'll go ahead and put them in this solid category. You know, I feel pretty good about that offensive line. Obviously, it gets a lot better with Rodney Hudson able to play at center, but you know, a lot of this and a lot of these teams, you'll hear me talk at length about the quarterback situation and, you know, the extension given to Kyler Murray, dual threat guy, has good, you know, arm strength, accuracy, plus, of course, what he can do as a runner. All that's apparent. You know, DeAndre Hopkins suspended for the first 6 games, but he's out in the field. He's still an elite wide receiver. Getting a little older, but still one of the best in the biz. And then you add a Hollywood Brown. I think that's a Christian Kirk upgrade. Can do a lot of the similar things, but just better. AJ Green's back, you know, that's fine. And then a ton of tight ends. You got to talk about Max Williams, Zach Ertz, and then, you know, Trey McBride, their first, you know, true selection in this past year's NFL draft. So lots of weapons at the skill position groups, and the offensive line pretty solid. And then Kyler Murray, of course, makes it all very good. You know, maybe what holds it back from elite is Cliff Kingsbury, and I am going to account for, you know, play callers and, you know, the schemes in and of themselves, because that is a component to consider with the offense. And I'm not a big Cliff Kingsbury guy, but you know, there's obviously could change. This could be a team that takes that jump from solid up to elite. Then we get to the Atlanta Falcons, and this is a hard one to project because you're talking about Marcus Mariota, who we haven't seen as a starter, you know, on a full season basis in quite some time, and there's no guarantee he's going to be the full year starter. Probably won't be. And then you're talking about a 3rd round rookie, Desmond Ridder, so that's tricky. 2nd year Kyle Pitts, I feel great about that. Drake London, you know, picked in the top 10. You have high expectations, but still a rookie. We haven't seen him play at the NFL level. And then, you know, Brian Edwards, first year at Atlanta. Auden Tate, first year with the Falcons. You know, how does Arthur Smith add all these different components? The offensive line's not all that good. Not at least not as good as it was, obviously, when this team was, you know, trying to be Super Bowl competitive. So there's things I like. I think for right now, I got to go below average. So probably one of the top teams there in that below average category because, like I said, I am a big, you know, believer in Drake London and his potential. I'm a huge Kyle Pitts guy. I think Desmond Ridder could be intriguing. And then, you know, Cordero Patterson, you know, really awesome breakout showing last year's this dual wide receiver running back, and I really do hope they continue to have to be the lead running back. Also, Tyler Algier, I think they got as a good value, I believe, in the 5th round, if my memory serves. At a BYU, great draft value, and I think really nice compliment to Cordero Patterson. So below average, close to mid. It kind of depends on what that quarterback position kind of shakes out to be. Then we get to the Baltimore Ravens. Man, if not for that wide receiver position, I think I'd put this team in elite. Big Lamar Jackson believer, and you know, I think he's just improved as a passer year over year. You know, and you add J.K. Dobbins back in the mix, Gus Edwards, and apparently Dobbins, you know, just got taken off pump. A lot of high expectations there. The offensive line, sure, there's a little bit of a battle there at left guard, and you know, it depends on Ronnie Stanley if he's healthy. But you know, assuming Stanley's out there and that unit's running at full strength, that's a really good offensive line, especially for their identity. And then you add a little bit of a wrinkle there with Tyler Linderbaum, his athleticism. Hopefully, he can be a guy that can pull and get out in front of Lamar Jackson, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, etc., etc. The wide receiver position is kind of what holds it back. I will give them the edge over the Cardinals. That one's close. Because you look at Arizona and you're like, okay, well, there's DeAndre Hopkins, there's Hollywood Brown, there's, you know, AJ Green. And then for Baltimore, it's like you need Rashad Bateman to take that step forward. And you're still looking for a deep threat. And they could add that with Will Fuller. Obviously, he's not on the roster at the time of me recording this. But I'm also a big Tylan Wallace supporter. And, you know, maybe not the fastest 40 compared to where I thought he might be coming out of Oak State. But I think he has that ability to be that vertical route tree guy and get behind safety. So for right now, given how dynamic that rushing attack is, and Greg Roman has done, you know, sure, does he need to update his passing attack? Of course, but when it comes to that rushing attack, it's lethal. And Greg Roman has run that to high tiers of success. So I'll give the Ravens the edge over the Cardinals, but that one's definitely close. The Buffalo Bills are an elite offense. There's not much we need to say here. Josh Allen's an elite quarterback. You add James Cook in the running back room, and now you got 3 solid pass catchers with Cook, Devin Singletary, and Zach Moss. Moss, Singletary have been great. I think Cook with a little bit more speed adds that home run ability. He's the more pure runner they're looking for, and I think you will see a little bit of a shift from getting a lot of carries and workload in the running game to Josh Allen to see that be more touches for James Cook. Try to preserve the body and your big multi-million dollar investment you were talking about, what, 200 something odd $million over that extension for Josh Allen. Yeah, you're going to try to keep him out on the field, so more touches there for James Cook. I'm a huge Stephon Diggs guy, top 5 wide receiver in the league in my opinion. And then you add in Gabe Davis looking like he's poised to break out. Isaiah McKenzie's been getting a ton of hype at that slot position. It seems like he's got the edge over Jameson Crowder and Khalil Shakir. But even that statement, if McKenzie's your slot, and then backing him up as Jameson Crowder, who's had years of quality play, and Khalil Shakir, who I thought was a great 5th round selection, could have been a guy who went in day 2 of the draft. That's fantastic. Ken Dorsey feels like an extension of what Brian Daboll was calling. And, if this matters to you, Joe Brady's the QB coach, so that's interesting. He's had some success working with some pretty good quarterbacks. If you're an LSU fan, you can certainly, vouch for that. But I think the pieces are there. This is an elite offense. The offensive line, maybe not amazing, but it's average, and given everything else around the offensive line, yeah. That unit's special. OJ Howard, and Dawson Knox would be another interesting, component as this year goes on. Who ends up becoming that lead tight end? The Carolina Panthers. So Baker definitely improves this unit there, and I'm a pretty big DJ Moore fan. And Robbie Anderson's solid. I think Terrence Marshall Jr. gets better in year 2. They have done a pretty nice job fixing up that offensive line. Obviously, using the number 6 overall pick. That's a huge asset. But you got a left tackle, you got a Kim Aquana, who some people had him as high as OT1 or even further than that, number 1 player on their board. So Kim Aquana definitely with a high ceiling. Austin Corbett, solid signing. Bradley Bozeman, you feel better about the center position. You still have Taylor Moton, Brady Christensen going into year 2, kicking inside to play guard. I think that could work better for him, maybe with his arms and the length that they are. Maybe not ideal tackle size, that sub 33 inches. Still a threshold that a lot of teams hold near and dear. Tight end positions, fine. It's it's whatever. It's nothing crazy. But those wide receivers, Baker, especially with the chip on his shoulder, and improved offensive line. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think this is probably a mid offense. There's some things you still have to see. How does it all come together, and what maybe holds this team back, and maybe it's a top the below average team because of this. Ben McAdoo, been a while since we've seen him as a play caller, and the last time we did, it wasn't pretty. So what does that offense really come together and look like? But Baker Mayfield, young talent. He's way better than Sam Darnold. Like the wide receivers. The offensive line's been improved a ton this offseason, so there's a lot to like there in Carolina. So then next up, we get to the Chicago Bears, and sorry Bears fans. I don't mean to continue to kick you while you're down and drag you through the mud, but it's bad offense. Justin Fields, I'm a big believer in him, and he does definitely elevate my perceived stock of this team, but the offensive line, they've had to bring in, Riley Reif, Michael Schofield. It does seem like Tevin Jenkins can be sticking around. He could become a starting guard, and, especially if Bourne holds on to that, right tackle spot, feels like a decent avenue and a path to getting him on the field and getting something in return for that second round, price tag, and moving up to get him in the second round last year. The running backs are solid. Khalil Herbert, really solid add day 3 of the 2021 draft. And when he's healthy, David Montgomery is certainly a serviceable lead guy in a backfield. And Tariq Cohen, we'll see if he ever gets on the field and what he brings to the table. But man, those wide receivers really bring me down. I like Darnell Mooney. I definitely think of him as a nice complement number 2 wide receiver. He'll have to take a leap forward. Now, that's not to say that's impossible. I was questioning if Michael Pittman Jr. could make that type of leap last year. And I think he at least emerged as someone who could be a 1B. Maybe not fully a 1A, but at least a 1B. And maybe Darnell Mooney does something similar this year. But then after him, Byron Pringle, Velus Jones Jr. It's not pretty. I do like Cole Kmet, but they haven't been very impressive with how they've utilized him. They've had Jimmy Graham, with the no trade clause, making a lot of money. So I understand they had to try to get the most out of him as possible. But can Cole Kmet take that step forward? I'm not totally convinced. It's a patchwork offensive line. Not a very impressive wide receiver room. And, first-time play caller and offensive coordinator Luke Getsy. Now, granted, he does come from that, Matt LaFleur, Packers tree, good background. That's hopeful, but we haven't seen it yet. So I'm going to go with bad for right now for the Bears. The Cincinnati Bengals have an elite offense. Not a whole lot to talk about. And I think there's totally an argument. Maybe it's a better offense than the Bills, but the offensive line vastly improved through the course of this offseason, adding La'el Collins, a Ted Karras, and Alex Kappa. Feels like, and especially with the reports of Jackson Carman, kicking ass, taking names at left guard, it feels like from left tackle to right tackle all the way through, that's a solid unit to work with. Joe Burrow is an emerging superstar quarterback. I like the running back situation. Joe Mixon's been very, very solid, especially when he's healthy. Samaje Perine has been able to hold off Chris Evans, but those are nice backup options. And then the wide receivers, of course, Jamar Chase, Tay Higgins, Tyler Boyd, need I say more? And then Hayden Hurst, even as the CJ Uzomah replacement, not a bad option. Like, in a league that has very few tight end talent, get Hayden Hurst as a replacement isn't that bad. Not far removed from being a first-round pick, might I add. So I think they did a pretty good job being able to fill the holes that became open, and then also filling and fixing that offensive line, which was already going to be the focus heading into this offseason. So it's an elite offense, no doubt, for Cincinnati. Then we get to the Cleveland Browns, and this is hard to gauge because, of course, we don't know what's going to happen with the Deshaun Watson situation fully. At the time we were recording, it's still the 6-game suspension, but with the appeal from the NFL, they want indefinite. They want a year long, and it may become that. So this could quickly go out of date. And if it's Jacoby Brissett, this offense probably below average because you're looking at the rest of the offense with some not necessarily holds across the offensive line, but you had J.C. Tretter there at center. That's now a new opening. You need Jedrick Wills to take that year 3 leap at left tackle. But all in all, I feel pretty good about that offensive line. We'll see what they decide to do with Kareem Hunt. That's time of this recording. No trade has been made there, but feel good about the running back position, whether it's Nick Chubb, Dearness Johnson, Chubb and Hunt, or Chubb, Hunt, and Johnson. I think they're going to be good there. Especially behind that offensive line. Really, it's the wide receiver room. If it's Jacoby Brissett, I'd put him in the below average because Amari Cooper, love that. I think him making $20 million, you look at that in retrospect with where the wide receiver market's at right now, that's a solid value. But, it's Donovan Peoples-Jones going to have to take a step forward as the number 2 guy. You're going to need more out of Mitchell Schwartz. And I'm just not entirely convinced all that can come together. I like Cooper, worried about the rest. And if it's, Jacoby Brissett, below average. But with Deshaun Watson, I'll go with solid, right there with the Cardinals. Just because last time we saw him, he was an elite quarterback. Even before that, very good one. And he's gotten better year over year. No guarantee he's going to be the same with a year off. But, and there's also no guarantee he's going to be playing this year. So the Browns are obviously a tough team to judge here. But with Watson, I'd go solid, maybe even more than that. But outside of Cooper, I think there's some holes at the wide receiver position and some new openings across the offensive line that haven't really been there before, so it'll be interesting to see how this team handles those holes. Then we get to the Dallas Cowboys. I think this is a solid offense. I'll bump them up and over the Browns, given their uncertainty. But Dak Prescott, I'm a big Dak Prescott guy, and he's kind of emerged as one of those guys that so cerebral pre-snap, being able to see the field at the line of scrimmage, does great stuff there, and that's really his biggest strength. What he most brings to the table. Zeke Elliott, given how much money he makes. Not the best value, but still a solid running back. And then Tony Pollard, very efficient, kind of the opposite of that, and he's cheap. So that's a nice 1-2 duo. And you lose Amari Cooper, but CeeDee Lamb is still an emerging superstar. It'll be a little bit before we see Michael Gallup, but I think they got him at a solid value, and he's a very solid player. And then Jalen Tolbert, 3rd-round rookie, but wide receivers tend to have the ability to be able to come on and make an impact right away. And I think Jalen Tolbert could be that guy. Working on the outside, vertical route tree, very good adaptability to go up and win at the catch point, very physical. I think that's a good add. Him and Gallup on the outside once he's back, and then CeeDee Lamb cooks up, gets some advantageous matchups, I should say, in the slot. I think that all works. And then, Dalton Schultz, solid tight end as well. So the offensive line improved as well. You add, get Tyron Smith, hopefully where he was last year, maybe even get the full game of schedule. Tyler Smith there at left guard, future Tyron Smith replacement. Terrence Steele, we'll see about that at right tackle, but it's a solid offensive line, all that to say. I think it's a solid offense, so therefore they go in the solid tier. The Denver Broncos, this could be an elite offense. Right now, I'll put them right between the Ravens and the Cardinals. Obviously, Russell Wilson, you know what, I'll go ahead and put this team at the bottom of the elite tier. Russell Wilson's a huge add, and that's where it really matters most. Javonte Williams, I'm all aboard the Javonte Williams hype train. And Melvin Gordon's a more than capable backup. You do lose Tim Patrick, and that does hurt, but you're still talking about Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, poised for a breakout, and then KJ Hamler, who very solid player, and you're playing him in the slot. I think that's a position where he can thrive. The offensive line is really, really solid. They kind of have Dalton Risner, who took a pay cut, and he's kind of extra depth, guard, center, flexibility there. And then Albert Ogbonibonam, athletic tight end. Haven't seen a whole lot from him yet in his career, but he's been stuck behind Noah Fant. But that plus Nathaniel Hackett calling plays. Big fan of Nathaniel Hackett. I mean, he's the guy who took Blake Bortles to an AFC Championship game and nearly beat the Patriots and took him to the Super Bowl. So Yeah, and he was there obviously as a big part of Aaron Rodgers winning back-to-back MVP. So sizable supporter of Nathaniel Hackett. I think he'll work wonders with this Broncos offense, and I think they'll be an elite group. The Detroit Lions. So Jared Goff's obviously the weakest component of this, but we'll kind of come back to that. Jamal Williams, DeAndre Swift, love those running backs. The offensive line's one of the best in the league. Once Jameson Williams is out there, him, DJ Chark, vertical receivers, but in different ways. Jameson Williams' speed, DJ Chark has his size and physicality, but also Jameson Williams gives you that yak ability, very twitchy after the catch. Then Amon-Ra St. Brown, inside-out flexibility, but you put him in that slot and let him cook, and if he continues his success from the back half last year, that's kind of a sneaky, scary wide receiver room to be talking about, but you'll need Chark to get back to where he was a handful of years ago. You need Amon-Ra St. Brown to be who he was last year, and you need Jameson Williams to come back healthy. So there's a lot of ifs. You're leaning on a lot of asterisks there, but there is still potential for that to happen. Like I said, Jared Goff is the weakest part, so I'm going to put this offense at mid. I like Baker more than I like Jared Goff, so I'll put him right behind the Panthers, but maybe the improved ecosystem and situation around Jared Goff elevates his play, and maybe he can get back to, Super Bowl-bound Rams type of production with Jared Goff, and if that's the case, then this offense can certainly supersede the Panthers, and maybe even move into that solid tier. On to the Green Bay Packers. I'm gonna still have them in the solid tier. I'll put them right behind Dallas. Both these teams kind of have wide receiver question marks right now in very different ways. Like, at least the Cowboys have a guaranteed superstar in CeeDee Lamb. Packers are, who's going to be our early down guy? 3rd and 8, we need to move the sticks. Who's going to be that person we can rely on? Is Romeo Doubs the deep threat? What is Christian Watson's role? A lot of question marks there, but the offensive line's very solid, has some extra depth. Like adding Zach Toms as a swing tackle on a contingency plan, depending on what happens with David Bakhtiari. Robert Tonyan's fine at tight end. But really, Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, really nice duo there in the backfield. And Aaron Jones' ability to catch football is a big plus. And you're talking about back-to-back MVP winner in Aaron Rodgers. So you got to put him at least in solid because of Aaron Rodgers. But I am really concerned about that wide receiver room. And you could even say, hey, the Browns should be ahead of them because at least they have Amari Cooper. And if that's your rationale and your argument, I don't hate that. And honestly, I'm kind of talking myself into it. So we'll move the Browns ahead of the Packers just because they at least have Amari Cooper and they have a good offensive line and running backs. And, I like Kevin Stefanski. The other big plus here and feather in the cap for the Packers, case for being a solid offense is Matt LaFleur, of course, who won 13 games all 3 years as a head coach. I'd say that's pretty darn good. Houston Texans, I'm going to put them in the below average category. There's things to like, and maybe you can bump them up and over the Falcons. I think I will. I'm not entirely sold on Davis Mills. Trust me, it's not like I'm thinking Davis Mills has become, the next big thing. But exceeded expectations was, it's kind of tough to say that at the same time because the rhetoric for Davis Mills is kind of, he was just as rough as a lot of the other rookie quarterbacks outside of Mac Jones. And it's like, okay, well, that means he's still rough. But had some games, had some big moments. And, that 300-yard game, three touchdowns against the Pats. Not many rookie quarterbacks. I'd argue Davis Mills is really the only rookie quarterback to have that level of success against Bill Belichick. But also Brandon Cooks, Laramie Tunsil. I'm excited to see Titus Howard hopefully sticking the whole year at tackle and what, hopefully benefit we get out of that. And then Keenan Green, nice addition, 15th overall pick. Add him in at left guard, feeling better about that unit as a whole. Nice running back pieces. Dameon Pierce, good 4th-round selection. Marlon Mack's been a guy who's overlooked because he's been stuck behind, various solid running backs in Indianapolis. So it's an opportunity for both of those guys to kind of break onto the scene, Mack and Pierce, respectively. So solid. There's pieces. There's things I like. But kind of like the Falcons, it's not fully put together. I think another reason to be excited if you're a Texans fan is Pep Hamilton calling plays as the OC, the guy who was calling plays and was the offensive coordinator for Andrew Luck and the Colts. So they had some good years, some good offenses, and hopefully that success translates and carries on to his tenure with the Houston Texans. Indianapolis Colts, I'll put them in. I could put them in the solid, but for right now, I'll go mid, top of the mid tier. Matt Ryan is not what he once was, but he is still a solid quarterback, and I would argue an upgrade over Carson Wentz, but he is not the Matt Ryan of old. Jonathan Taylor might be the best pure runner in the league. Him and Nick Chubb, in my eyes, and Derrick Henry, those three are the elite pure runners across the NFL. And like I said, last year I was a little skeptical that Michael Pittman. I liked him as a second-round pick coming out of USC. Saw a lot of Juju Smith-Schuster back when we kind of saw Juju as a 1B. And I still feel like that's where Michael Pittman Jr. is right now. Now that being said, you add Alec Pierce, okay, another vertical wide receiver in the mix. Hopefully Paris Campbell can stay healthy and be a field stretching slot. I think that's a role that would serve him really well. They've always been able to find production out of the tight end position. The offensive line is pretty good. I am concerned about left tackle. And left tackle plus an aging Matt Ryan, who is not mobile and is pretty quick to go to the ground, and he doesn't have an elite wide receiver. That's kind of where I put him at mid. You compare them to Green Bay, who's right now the bottom of my solid, and obviously Green Bay has a better quarterback. I feel better about the offensive line in totality, and where Michael Pittman would certainly be the best wide receiver in Green Bay. There's enough other pieces in play that I feel better off about the Packers than I do the Colts. You could totally make the argument that the Colts should be at the very end of solid, and maybe I'll change that towards the end. I do like Frank Reich as a play caller a ton, so that change may be imminent, but for right now, I'm going to leave them in the mid. The Jaguars, I'm going to put them in the below average. So, you bring in a Brandon Sheriff. That's an improvement across the offensive line, but for the most part, it's still Jawan Taylor at right tackle. Right now, it's Walker Little getting the first team rest, but that's because Jawan Taylor's hurt. You're bringing back, and not just bringing back, but extending Cam Robinson. Okay, he's, I guess, been average. James Robinson, Travis Etienne, I think that's a solid 1-2 punch in the backfield. You're anticipating a year or two leap from Trevor Lawrence, and a big part of that is the hiring of Doug Peterson, and a guy who has had a ton of success as an offensive, minded head coach and a play caller, and obviously former NFL quarterback. Wasn't uber successful there, was a backup, but has experience in that type of position where Trevor Lawrence is trying to succeed now. So there's pieces that I like, but still, outside of Brandon Sheriff, it's mostly the same offensive line. And it's a wide receiver room that, yes, added Christian Kirk and yes, added Zay Jones, but is there really a one? Is there a guy that I look at on the Jags roster that says 3rd and 10, I can count on that guy getting open and moving the sticks? All right, now I got to say no. So I'm going to put him in below average. Maybe they should be ahead of the Falcons and the Texans because Trevor Lawrence is the most intriguing quarterback of those three teams in their situations. But yeah, I'm not really thrilled about what Trevor Lawrence is still having to work with, which is not a good sign for him going into year two. Kansas City Chiefs, I would still argue an elite offense. Right now, give them the edge over Denver. I may like the wide receiver room in Denver a little bit more, but I'm also a big Sky Moore guy. I think Juju could totally work as a guy who finds soft spots in the zone, lives at the first down marker, and it's kind of that insurance policy. Plus Travis Kelce, maybe the best tight end in football, depending on who you talk to. Andy Reid, Eric Bieniemy, masterminds when it comes to scheming it up and drawing it up. Great offensive, play callers. And heads collaborating with Patrick Mahomes, who over the last 3 years, as good as it gets. Him and Rodgers, obviously Rodgers got the 2 MVPs, but Mahomes, has done things that we just have not seen before. We'll see how that running back position plays out, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire is still a former first-round pick and a guy who, as a pass catcher, totally fits with, in theory, what the Chiefs are trying to do. And that offensive line has gotten a lot better compared to where it was, 2 years ago when they lost in the Super Bowl. So the offensive line, there is a solid stable of wide receivers. I didn't even mention MVS. MVS obviously has that downfield speed that you lose with Tyreek Hill. Maybe not to the same degree, but still field stretching ability nonetheless. So solid stable of wide receivers to lean on. Travis Kelce, good offensive line, talent in the backfield, and Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, that's an elite offense if you ask me. And the Chargers are right there with them. And maybe I'll give them the edge. For right now. I take Mahomes over Herbert, but Herbert is still an emerging, franchise superstar quarterback. Austin Eckler, fantastic. Like Austin Eckler is what the Chiefs wanted Clyde Edwards-Helaire to be. And, Eckler is one of the best in the game, especially when you factor in his pass catching ability. The offensive line, left tackle through right guard feels solidified. I still feel like Darrell Williams is a guy they're going to hit up and try to sign. Play that right tackle spot, maybe even Eric Fisher if they can convince him to switch sides of the offensive line. I still stand by. Maybe Jamari Sawyer should step in and play, despite him being a 6th round pick as a rookie. I totally think he should have gone before the 6th round. And you kick Matt Filer over to right tackle where he's been solid before. Then I feel like you have a complete offensive line without having to sign anybody. But go sign a right tackle and that offensive line's complete. And I totally think that move is going to happen considering how aggressive this team's been. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, great 1-2 punch. Big guys who went in different ways. Keenan Allen working the underneath still, relying on his route running. Mike Williams being a vertical guy who can be very physical. Jalen Guyton's got to take a step forward as a vertical speed guy, but I still think that could be in the cards. And really kind of the hesitation and maybe where you would move the Chiefs and maybe even the Broncos ahead of the Chargers is Joe Lombardi. what is that offense like? Last year, it was too much reliance on the underneath stuff, trying to get the ball out of the hand of Justin Herbert quick, which I can respect that, but you also got to be able to draw up big plays and try to work the ball down the field. The dude is a cannon. You have wide receivers who can win down the field. Got to take advantage of it, and I need to see more of that this year, so maybe that leads to me switching Kansas City and Chargers at the end of this video, but for right now, without a doubt, the Chargers are an elite offense. The LA Rams, I think you could put in that same category. We'll have to see what that offensive line totally blooms into. You know, Joseph Noteboom taking over for Andrew Whitworth. That is going to be a little bit of a transition, but Noteboom did look good last year. Logan Bruss starting a 4th-round rookie at guard. Not ideal, but the Rams have had a pretty solid track record of making that work. Matt Stafford, I'm not too worried about his injuries right now in training camp. I think he's going to be out in the field and kind of more of the same what we saw last year. Running back position is solid. Hopefully Cam Akers can get back to where he was, pre-Achilles injury, 2 years ago, because he got back quick and wasn't as efficient as maybe we kind of hoped and anticipated he would return to being. Darrell Henderson's still there, and he's a solid running back as well. The wide receivers are really what is impressive about this unit and why ultimately I'll put it the back end of the elite tier. I'm not as in love with it maybe with, where Denver's at. I feel really solid with the Broncos across the board. A little bit of a question mark for the Rams offensive line, but Allen Robinson, minimum. Think about how many times you see Stafford, and also, let's just get this out of the way, Cooper Kupp, one of the best receivers in football, so yes, obviously he's there. But think about how many times you've watched, the Rams games, and, Matt Stafford's looking right, nothing's open, and then he turns, fires over the middle of the field, and there's Robert Woods running that backside dig. Allen Robinson gives you that, and he might even run it better, honestly. And I think it gives you a little bit more of a downfield weapon and a threat. And if this team adds Odell Beckham Jr., like I anticipate, no guarantee there, then yeah, that wide receiver room's awesome. Plus Van Jefferson's more than solid. Yeah, I'll put him in the elite tier for right now, but they could be borderline between elite and solid depending on how you would define those words. The Vegas Raiders. This feels like a team that's gonna go in the solid. Biggest question mark is going to be that offensive line, specifically right guard, right tackle. Is Brandon Parker going to earn another year starting at right tackle? Then what do you do with Alex Leatherwood? If Leatherwood's at one of those spots where it's Denzel good. So I need to see how this offensive line shakes out. Andre James is the big disappointment, replacing Rodney Hudson. Does he get better? It's his second year as a starter, hopefully, but still question marks for everybody basically not named Colton Miller. Derek Carr, though, a stud. Yeah, Devontae Adams, a stud. And that just makes the life of Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow that much easier. Josh Jacobs may be on the block, but him, Zamir White, I feel fine about that, running back group. And it's going to be a committee one way or another because it's Josh McDaniels and, he comes from that Belichick Patriots way of doing it. It's going to be 3 or 4 running backs pretty consistently getting touches. So I don't really read into the tea leaves of him playing in the Hall of Fame game. And I'm not really buying into the, trade rumors and that possibility. I think he'll be the lead guy, but I think it's going to be a committee and, it's expensive to give him the 5th-year option anyways. I think he's probably walking one way or another, but you're going to take advantage of the talent while it's there. Anyways, I think the Raiders, obviously, Carr, Adams, that connection is going to be special. Waller, Renfrow. I'll put them at the top of solid, but, we may change that. We may come back to that at the end of the video. Miami Dolphins. Wow. This comes down to Tua, but they have made some improvements across the offensive line. Teron Armstead's a big add. Tyreek Hill, of course. Notable Cedric Wilson as well, with Jalen Waddle going into year 2. Mike Gesicki's still there. Add a bunch of running back talent. Raheem Mostert, Chase Edmonds, kind of leading the way there. This comes down to Tua. I think I'll put him at the back of solid. Still some question marks for the offensive line. Tua is the biggest of it. You could switch them in the Colts for sure, but man, if it does work out and Mike McDaniel, piece together an offense that's perfect for Tua with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Cedric Wilson, that is speed left, right, and center. And you have Mike Gesicki, better running backs to work with. Yeah, I think this offense could be special. Question marks, but I think the potential's there. The Minnesota Vikings, I'll put the Vikings up and over the Dolphins. I'm a pretty big believer in, Kevin O'Connell, the skill, what he can bring, especially out of Kirk Cousins. I think this offense would just be more aggressive. There were a lot of times last year where, you get Clint Kubiak wanting to just kind of have the drive end, kind of rolling over and dying, 3rd and long, going to the draws, forcing Kirk into checkdowns. I think, with Kevin O'Connell, it's going to be a lot more open. Justin Jefferson, obviously, top 3 receiver in the league, in my opinion. Adam Thielen's still getting it done, and then it's going to be more 3 receiver sets. So D.D. Westbrook, A.J. Osborne, those 3-4. I like that. Irv Smith Jr. goes down with an injury in camp, so of course we'll have to, see if he gets back out there and maybe a potential breakout candidate. We've been saying that for a while now, so I don't know what that tight end position is going to look like for Minnesota, but the receivers excite me. Kirk Cousins, I think, is going to be in for, maybe the best year of his career, dare I say. And then also, of course, Alvin Cook, one of the best running backs in football. And it's an offensive line that's improved a ton over the last half decade. And I think Christian Darrisaw is only going to be that much better in year 2. So I'll put him in the solid tier. You could flip them in the Dolphins for sure. There's, things to be hesitant about for both sides or for both those teams. But I'm really excited about Kevin O'Connell and Kirk Cousins working with, each other, and then Justin Jefferson. That's just the cherry on top. Let me get the New England Patriots. And I'll put them in mid. I like Mac Jones. The offensive line's pretty good. Damian Harris, Ramondre Stevenson. That's a nice duo. The wide receivers are concerning. Devontae Parker, good. Kendrick Bourne was good last year. Jacoby Myers has been good. And you hear that and you're like, oh, well, this is a good offense. But they just don't have that guy. They don't have a dude who can take over a game. And then I am perplexed to see what they're going to do with Jonnu Smith. Made a ton of money, didn't really get fully utilized last year. Hunter Henry kind of stole the show there. So it'll be interesting to see what that offense, kind of comes together as, and also who is going to be the OC. Is it really Matt Patricia? Interesting to say the least. So I'll put him right there in the middle of that mid-tier. Offense I'm concerned about, but, Mac Jones in year 2 could take another step forward, become that much better of a processor and decision maker, that much more accurate, and, elevate all of his weaknesses. The New Orleans Saints. I think I'm going to have to put this in the solid tier as well. I'll put him ahead of the Dolphins. I like Jameis. I hope he kind of has a little bit more aggressiveness into him, but that being said, seeing him play within that Sean Payton offense last year was different. He was much more, clinical with the football, and hopefully Pete Carmichael can have that similar touch with him. But now you're talking about Michael Thomas coming back. Apparently he looks really good. Chris Olave, I've been seeing clips of him cooking dudes left and right on Twitter. So that's an awesome sign. That's a really nice 1-2, duo, and I think 2 really good route runners just at very different levels of the field. We'll see how this Alvin Kamara situation shakes out. Obviously some off the field things to take into account, but when Alvin Kamara is out there, he's a top 5 running back for a reason. The offensive line, left guard through right tackle, you feel pretty good about. Solid unit. James Hurst versus Trevor Penning. I think the Saints are going to give Penning just about every opportunity to win that job, but feels like Hurst, from what I'm reading, still has the first team reps going his way. So Hurst versus Penning, that's the one question mark for that offensive line, and really for the offense in general, outside of obviously no longer having Sean Payton there. So that's a little concerning. Maybe you could flip them in the Dolphins, but I'm a believer in Jameis with that wide receiver duo in specific with Thomas and Olave. Love that. Kamara as well. So I'd definitely put that offense in the solid tier. Giants, this could be a rough year. I think I'll put them in the top of below average. This may rub a lot of people the wrong way. I'm hesitant to buy into Daniel Jones, but at the same time, him and Josh Allen do have some comparable skills. Working with Brian Daboll could only be better than, what Daniel Jones has been subjected to working with Jason Garrett, over the last couple of years. So that's an improvement in and of itself. Draft an Evan Neal, you sign a Mark Lewinsky, a John Feliciano. Feels like they're making some progress on that offensive line. It's getting better. Year 3 of Andrew Thomas, you're encouraged by that. Saquon Barkley hopefully coming back fully healthy. That can only help. And then the wide receivers, they're going to have to step up. Simply put, Kenny Golladay is going to have to be worth $18 million. Kadarius Toney is going to have to warrant being a first-round pick. Wan'Dale Robinson is going to show why he was a second-round pick. Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton. There's a lot of guys who can be good. They just got to be. For years now, we've been talking about, this person's had some moments. This person's shine. This person's had some flashes. It's just got to come together. This is a team that needs to start to figure out who's going to be on that roster in 3 to 5 years when we're competing for the playoffs and maybe even more than that. So who in those wide receiver, positions, who in that wide receiver room is going to stick? I need to find that answer this year. And that's kind of my hesitancy. I'm a big Kenny Golladay fan, but you look at him last year in the production and Pro Football Focus grades and just go watch him when he's actually out on the field. It's disappointing, especially when you consider the $18 million a year price tag. So I'm hoping those wide receivers take a step forward. And if they do, plus the work on the offensive line, Daboll working with Daniel Jones, there might be a pathway into that mid-conversation, maybe even a little bit more. But for right now, I'm going to go in the below average tier. I'm going to have the Jets. I'm going to put them in the back of the mid. Everything around Zach Wilson has gotten better. Now, obviously, the Mekhi Becton injury is a bit of a concerning note. But they had Dwayne Brown in for a visit. It sounds like that's probably going to be, a done deal. Fant and Brown, bookend tackles. That sounds good. Legendary Tucker going into year 2. They've done good work across the offensive line, including signing Laken Tomlinson this free agency period. Drafting Garrett Wilson. Year 2 of Elijah Moore. Another year for Corey Davis. we'll see if they shop Denzel Mims, but those at least those top three I'm feeling pretty solid about as a trio working together. CJ Uzomah, Tyler Conklin, big investment at tight end. Hopefully that helps Zach Wilson, and then also Breece Hall, a true workhorse running back and a guy who could be an impact in the passing game. Plus year two Michael Carter. So it's so much around Zach Wilson I am encouraged by. Now I just need to see Zach Wilson take that leap, which I'm starting to get a little bit more optimistic about him. So I'll put him in that mid tier. This is a little bit of a projection here, but I'll put him in the mid for right now. Eagles, I definitely think belong in the solid tier. It's hard to put them too far up in that group. Love the wide receiver duo. The offensive line's great. Very solid running backs with Miles Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell. It kind of comes down to Jalen Hurts. But, all I've seen him do year over year is get better. So I'm buying into it. I'll move him up above the Saints, too. I also feel a little bit better about the offensive line depth there. Maybe that's kind of the nudge versus, the Saints. If an injury happens, I'm gonna be really kind of concerned about where, whether it's wide receivers, offensive line, whatever. I'm gonna be concerned with where that goes. Plus, they have a whole left tackle. I feel really good about the entire Eagles offensive line. Love that 1-2 duo. We'll see if they shop Rager or decide to move on entirely just via the cut. And like I said, all we've done is seen Jalen Hurts get better. From Alabama to Oklahoma to his rookie year to last year. I'm anticipating at least a small step for this upcoming year. Again, Gainwell, Sanders, love that running back duo, and I like Nick Sirianni. That pivot, after a Thursday night loss to the Bucs to really embrace the identity of being a run-first offense, improved their statistical production, and it raised the floor in Thailand. It made them a really good team, and it got a team that snuck into the playoffs. So I'm expecting more of the same there from Sirianni and that growth. So I'm big on the Eagles this year. I'm not afraid to admit it. And, I'll put that off in the solids here. We get to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This one's another tricky one to grade. I think I'm going to have to go below average because outside of the wide receivers, and that's where I'll start. George Pickens is tearing it up in camp, and I like Deontay Johnson. He's got the 2-year extension. I think that's a nice middle ground for both sides. I'm still a big believer in Chase Claypool, especially with the idea of if Pickens becomes your one, and he becomes the X, the guy who can deal with press coverage. Then Chase Claypool moves into that Z role. He gets a little more off, a little step off the line, and use him on those end arounds, jet sweeps, make him a threat with the ball in his hand, and then Deontay Johnson getting favorable mismatches and utilizing his quickness in the slot. That all sounds great to me. Pat Freiermuth, I think he's only going to get better in year two. Najee Harris, same thing at the running back spot. So all of that sounds great. There's firepower, but the offensive line, with a quarterback who's not going to get rid of the ball way faster than everyone else, like Big Ben did, in 2.2 seconds time to throw last year, by far and away leading the NFL. That's not going to be the same case this year, whether it's Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett. And then that leads me to the second point. I'm concerned about the offensive line, and I'm obviously concerned about the quarterback position. Mitch Trubisky has not have a illustrious career to lean and look back at and say, okay, well, he can elevate and get the most out of everybody around him. And then Kenny Pickett is a rookie quarterback coming from one of the worst, rookie classes for the quarterback position I've seen in my lifetime. And he was the only guy taken in the first round. The next was taken 52 picks later. It was Desmond Ridder, I think 77 to the Falcons. So yeah, 57 picks later. So that's kind of concerning. So the quarterback's the offensive line, I got to put it in below average, despite how much I love the skill position group. I think, and then plus Matt Canada. What has Matt Canada done to prove that he's even an average OC? So I think I got to go below average for the Steelers. And the Seahawks might be a bad offense. I'm kind of concerned about how young that offense might be. You might be starting to bookend tackles as much as I love Charles Cross. He's my OT1 in this past class. Big Charles Cross guy. And third round pick, the name is escaping me. Another tackle, drafted from Washington, keeping him in state. Abraham Lucas, there it comes. He played right tackle. I think that's a seamless fit. But still starting 2 tackles, that could be rough. Kenneth Walker's going to be a big part of the mix. Not really as worried about it when it comes to the running back spot, but him, and then if you get more out of Rashad Penny like you did at the end of last year, that could be a nice 1-2 duo. But, it's right now Geno Smith. It's Drew Lock. We'll see if they end up getting their hands on a Jimmy Garoppolo. At the time of me recording this, that has not happened. So I think I'm going to go bad. I have a little bit more hope than them versus the Bears. They do have DK Metcalf. I still have Tyler Lockett. I can't put this team totally in the bad. And honestly, I'd probably put them ahead of the Jags too, which is that's tough. I'll put the Jags ahead because I do like Trevor Lawrence, but I'm going back and forth here and I'm rambling. But DK Metcalf's obviously a stud. I think this team totally could trade Tyler Lockett, but as of right now, guy who's averaging 9 touchdowns over the last 4 years. So big plays left and right, but that was with Russell Wilson. So What does it look like with Geno Smith? What does it look like with Drew Lock? Odds are not very good. The San Francisco 49ers. I think this is a really good offense, and I'll kind of smush them right between the Ravens and the Cardinals. We have now extended our solid tier. Those last three teams, we'll talk about them as we get there. You can no longer see them. I apologize for that. But, love the rushing attack. Kyle Shanahan's one of the best offensive coordinators in the game. Do have some interesting position battles across the interior of the offensive line, but as the Shanahans do, they make it work. They figure it out. Brandon Ayuk, it's another training camp where he's dominant. Deebo Samuel with his extension, I'm sure he's happy. Hopefully, they still find ways to use him as a part of the running game because he may not like those touches, but damn is he good behind whoever's under center. And Trey Lance showcasing some potential with some of the throws we're seeing. Now, it's a different thing to do it in game action, so let's get to the preseason and then let's see it in the regular season. But man, if Trey Lance lives up to the potential, if Brandon Ayuk can stay hot, and they continue to use Deebo in a variety of ways to figure out who's going to be the starters across the interior of the offensive line and let Kyle Shanahan do his thing as a play caller. Yeah, honestly, it might be more than solid. But I do like Derek Carr and Devontae Adams, Josh McDaniels with Vegas, and the big Lamar Jackson guy. I think Rashad Bateman can get really good in year two, and Greg Roman has his offense kind of down to his T. So close between the 49ers and the Ravens and the Cardinals even, but the Raiders as well. But it's close right there at the top of the solid tier. Moving on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'll put him in the elite tier. I'll put him ahead of the Rams and honestly probably the Broncos as well, considering no Tim Patrick now. But they can roll out 4 receivers deep. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Russell Gage, Julio Jones. And you also got Scotty Miller there, so that's pretty good. Leonard Fournette coming off a really good year where he was actually pretty solid as a pass catcher. Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback and most accomplished quarterback of all time. Offensive line, especially in the interior, is taking some bumps along the way. Robert Hainsey's going to have to step up. Shaq Mason's going to have to continue to play good football. They got him at a bargain. And then maybe Luke Gadecki at that other guard spot, or maybe they can find somebody who's a late camp cut veteran that could step in and fill in. But with those wide receivers, with Byron Leftwich still there calling plays, Tom Brady being Tom Brady, yeah, it's an elite offense. Honestly, Tom Brady nearly alone could make an offense in that elite category. The Tennessee Titans. So I'm a little concerned about this team. I think there's pieces to like. I'll put them right behind the Colts, their AFC South rival. The offensive line's gotten a little weaker, especially in the interior. Whether it's Dylan Radence or Nicholas Petit-Frere at right tackle, I wouldn't be surprised if the other one ends up at left guard or another starting position across that offensive line. The wide receiver room obviously gets worse with no A.J. Brown, but Treylon Burks has been getting some positive buzz out of camp. Now that's one I'm a little bit more hesitant to believe, as much as I think that might just be first round pick gets hype at camp, things you just want to hear as a team, or a follower of the team. And then Robert Woods coming off an injury that cost him a majority of last year. So is he the same guy? If so, great. He's also a really good run blocker, so that helps out Derrick Henry and crew, kind of filling that identity. But those two receivers could be solid, but it's still Ryan Tannehill, who limited as a quarterback maybe. I don't really see him getting to an elite tier anytime soon. He is very reliant. He can be good, but he's reliant upon having a good supporting cast around him. And really, in my eyes, the supporting cast has only gotten weaker. Derrick Henry, maybe you're not too worried about the injuries from last year carrying over and affecting him this year. If you're not, he's going to have a big year, but it's a passing league. You win through the air. Derrick Henry can be great. He can be a stud. He can open up things, but once you get to the playoffs, it's going to be a different story. I'm going to put him in the mid. And the other component that makes me a little worried is Todd Downing. Obviously, Arthur Smith had that offense clicking on all cylinders. He had it super efficient. He was one of the best offenses in football. Todd Downing, a little bit of a step back last year. And now with an absence of talent that he originally had, I'm concerned to see what it looks like this year. And last but not least, the Washington Commanders. Carson Wentz is an improvement over Taylor Heineke. The floor and the bottom barrel of their play are probably pretty similar, but Wentz naturally has more upside. He has more arm talent than a Taylor Heineke. You would expect that out of a number 2 overall pick versus an undrafted free agent ad from Old Dominion. So no disrespect to Taylor Heineke, but Wentz naturally brings a little bit more to the table. Jahan Dotson, your 16th overall pick, taken in the first round, maybe a little earlier than where I would have liked, but he's still a first-round receiver and still a really good receiver in and of itself, paired up with Terry McLaurin. You also have De'Ami Brown going into year 2. You have Curtis Samuel still in the mix. You got Logan Thomas hopefully coming back pretty soon. The offensive line, been solid. been stable, been consistent, and I like the running backs as well. J.D. McKissick's back, and of course, Antonio Gibson is a really nice add, or not add, but young player that's going to continue to grow and just been a really fun player to watch. So from this in his career, needs to get a little bit better when it comes to being a pure runner, and going to Pro Football Focus, leading some of their stats here. Commanders are actually one of the best teams last year in perfectly blocked run plays, but the yards per carry didn't really show that, and that's because I think Antonio Gibson, you got to think, still learning the running back position, so hopefully that vision gets better in year 2 or year 3 now. But if he does take that leap forward, that just adds that much more to this game, to this offense. So I'll put him in the mid, right ahead of Carolina, but behind New England, and that's because I can trust Mac Jones as a processor and decision maker. Wentz, despite me giving him some praise, which if you've been around the channel, can be few and far between for me, but he has some natural arm talent, and he'll make some wild throws that make your jaw hit the floor, but you can also make some questionable decisions and force some things, and kind of got away with it. Got bailed out a little bit by a good defense last year in Indianapolis, so sometimes those mistakes didn't totally felt, and I think this is a good defense in Washington, but it's also a defense that was pretty good talent-wise last year and left me a little disappointed, so there's nothing saying that can't happen again this year. I'll put him in the mid-tier, and honestly, we kind of ranked him as we went along. So that is going to do it for my ranking, tier list style, of the 32 NFL offense. Tell me what you think about each and every offense. Who would you have in the elite tier? Where do you draw the line between elite and solid? Love to have your thoughts. Who are some X factors that maybe change where a team stands in this? Anything you have to comment on, I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section, and I respond to just about every comment. So let's talk about NFL and these offenses down below. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button. It'll help me out a ton. And if you're new around here, want to see more sports content in your life, just hit that big red subscribe button. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Teej. I'm signing off.